A very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen, all of you practitioners, members of the accountancy profession in Uganda who have managed to log into this CPD. My name is Charles Lutimba, who will be moderating you through this particular CPD, the Audit Quality webinar. We have specifically dedicated this CPD to audit quality issues, just to have a feel or a perspective of how we are managing audit quality aspects and how we should be doing this throughout this period of the pandemic. Our expectations as the profession, as the institute, is at least to see you, the practitioners out there, continue to deliver quality audits, which are automatically compliant with international standards on auditing. And as we're going to go through today's webinar, we shall be focusing on practical aspects of audit quality, the considerations that you need to put in mind as far as planning, execution, reporting automatically in the era of COVID-19. We shall have also a feel of the lessons that we have learned as far as this crisis is concerned, and automatically we see how we can forge a way forward as practitioners, as members of the accountancy profession in this country. I have today two distinguished gentlemen who will be taking us through the session today, CPA James Musabe and CPA Uthman Mayanja. Automatically, we shall be looking through how the small and medium practices, for example, have responded to aspects of audit quality amid this COVID-19 crisis. We forge a way forward and see how we can evolve and thrive throughout the crisis. Our session will commence with a presentation from CPA Uthman Mayanja, but as the team shares the screens, the slides for CPA Mayanja, allow me remind you, ladies and gentlemen, of our special menu on the website, the ICPAU website, a menu that typically touches on aspects to do with the COVID-19. We have a number of resources embedded within there. We have resources, for example, the guidance for auditors, where we labored to share with you, the practitioners, with you, the auditors out there, key audit considerations that you will need to put in mind in as far as thriving and sailing through this moment of the pandemic is concerned. Once you go through that paper, particularly, it gives you your concerns or key highlights on how we should be communicating with those charged with governance. We talk about issues of valuation of inventory. We talk about issues of, for example, stock taking and valuation therein. We talk about aspects of going concern, and automatically, if there are any issues that may need to be raised in as far as the key audit matters are concerned, that document gives you a brief of how you would approach such aspects. I pray that we all reserve some time, look through these resources, and then we see how they can be of use. But like I said, there are equally other resources that we have linked to several other articles, other publications that we believe should be of a guide to you auditors, to you practitioners amid this corona pandemic. Allow me at this moment, ladies and gentlemen, invite CPA Uthman Mayanja CPA Uthman Mayanja is a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, commonly known as PwC. He will be sharing with us practical audit quality considerations. Shares with us his experience in as far as audit quality and COVID in the era of COVID-19 should be considered. I don't know, Peter, whether we can see CPA Mayanja's slides. And if that is possible, CPA Mayanja, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Charles. Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon to you, Charles, and thank you very much for inviting me and allowing me to share with members of ISPAU on this very interesting topic and very timely topic indeed. I am not very familiar with Zoom. I'm using another application altogether, but so far it has not allowed me to show you what I look like and that I'm really here. I'm not a robot, because the video won't start. Maybe that's to do with the admin, but I'm actually quite happy with that arrangement. So, okay, I think I've been permitted to share my video, and I'll do that just now. I will continue speaking, and I assume that the technology will sort itself out as and when it deems it fit to do so. Oh, here we go. All right, thank you very much. So on the topic of, I've been asked to speak about three broad matters. One is on the new quality control standards from the ISB. Two is on the lessons, practical considerations for audit during this difficult period, what lessons we've learned and the way forward. And the time is not very friendly for us, so I will try and keep my remarks as brief as possible. In addition, I also realize that there's been a lot of information that has been made available to us as accountants through various forums on COVID-19 and the sort of things that we should do. And Charles, you've done a very good job of exposing some of the resources that our own institute has developed and shared. And I wouldn't like to spend so much time regurgitating some of that information. So what I will do is, and in fact, for that perspective, I will first of all apologize to members, and I'll explain why I don't have any slides and why you're struggling to see my slides. When I started to prepare for this presentation, I came across resources from IFAC, very good resources on this new quality control standards, and very well prepared slides. But unfortunately, I then realized this morning that their permission is required before we can share them. So at the risk of sharing something that would then land us into trouble with our mother body, I have written to them asking for their permission, but unfortunately they wrote back saying that the process takes 2 weeks. However, I have copied the link to those slides into the group chat for this particular call. And those members that are using computers should be able to copy and paste that link. I will use the publicly permissible documents for us to share in order for members to follow what it is that we're talking about, because it is entirely followable in as far as that is concerned. In as far as the second topic is concerned, which I'd like to start with, the practical considerations for audit during COVID-19, I felt that a lot of our members would already be familiar with the practical issues. We've gone through them for the last 3 months, and it might be a little bit of a waste of time to go through the motions talking about it because we've been there, done that. What I thought we would do is that we would have a very brief discussion. I'll share some broad comments. I shall then ask members to post any questions that they have, and we shall use the benefit of the Q&A to go through any sharing in as far as that is concerned. And I hope that will be acceptable. And as soon as I'm in a position to, if we're able to share slides based on permissions that we're given, then I'll provide those slides to ISPAU to share with members. All right, so let me begin with a few remarks on audit quality and the practical considerations. What are the practical considerations, as Charles has posed the question? You're about to begin an audit, you're in the process of doing an audit, process of issuing your reports. What are the things that you should be paying attention to right now? And I want to say, to begin my share with members by suggesting that I think we're very lucky that COVID-19 has happened in the year that it has happened, because of the immensity of the resources that we have available to us, that maybe 5 years ago would not have been available. So facilities such as Zoom, our access to internet, the level of sort of internationalization of the corporate world and of business, accounting and financial reporting has helped us tremendously, because we have had access to a lot of information and a lot of guidance that has been shared by IFAC, guidance that has been shared by local institutes, guidance that has been shared by other regulators, particularly in Europe, the securities markets regulator, the financial reporting regulator, and others have provided quite a bit of guidance to help us understand and appreciate some of the challenges arising and some of the expectations that people will have. So because of technology, we now have a pretty good idea how different markets are coping with the challenges. I think 5 years ago, 10 years ago, would have been fairly in the dark to understand how other jurisdictions coping with auditing and continuing to discharge professional responsibilities in this environment. So very, very briefly, and I will, as I said, I will share with you very, very briefly from documentation that has been prepared by IFAC themselves and has been shared with us. And this information, rather it is the ISB, this information is available on their website. And I will post the link for that information as well, because I think it's important to for members to have access and be able to access it for themselves in their own time. So from the point of view of the guidance coming out from our mother body, the standard setter, is for us to understand the challenges of gathering evidence within a COVID environment. And we've all seen that, I'm sure, with our clients' businesses locked away, our clients not able to move, our clients not able to access their systems and their records, and therefore finding ourselves unable to get access to the basic audit evidence that we need in order to do our jobs. So the first consideration when we're planning is to think about, will we have access to personnel at the client? Will we have access to the records of the client? Will we have access to the facilities of the client? So if we need to do inventory counts, if we need to do physical verifications of different assets and that sort of thing, those are the first practical considerations that we've had to contend with. I think probably a more difficult one, and again, it depends on the clients that we're working with. So if your client is a school, schools have been closed. If your client is a hotel, hotels have been closed. And you remember in the early days of the lockdown, when people were being embarrassed and being arrested when they showed up to work, even though their workplaces were not technically open, and being shamed in the media. It happened to schools, it happened to public health or gyms and that sort of thing. So, by and large, but of course we also know that in some cases factories were allowed to open, banks were allowed to remain operational, unable to continue to offer services, and therefore could potentially therefore be able to support services, continue provision of professional services. When it comes to, I think the by far more tricky affair, as far as I'm concerned, in my personal experience, and I imagine it's the same for other professionals as well, would have been the access to our staff. With people living in different parts of Kampala, some people living outside of Kampala even, being able to access our teams, being able to relate with our teams in the manner that we are used to Where I come from, we say, Amasogo Mganda Gali Mungalo. We say, let me see, and you want to touch, even though you should really just be looking at the thing you want to look at. So I think we've had to make serious adjustments in the way that we work. But I also think that the effectiveness of the communication, the relaying of and sharing of information, how do we get in touch with one another between audit team members and within the team itself, but also within the hierarchy in that team, whether it's the audit manager, whether it's the audit partner, or the most junior members of the audit team. So I think that has been by far a big challenge and a massive culture issue for us to deal with. On top of that are the softer issues which nobody is really talking about. I think in Kenya, yesterday we began a conversation about mental health. In Uganda, we have a long overdue conversation. We had the events, the unfortunate events to the young man over the weekend that set himself alight. But there have been warnings about how COVID is creating stressful situations in homes, with individuals. And we are equally individuals, we are human beings, and as accountants, we are not saved and are not ourselves immune to those types of reactions. So I think by far the most important practical issue for us as practitioners, as people that are running and managing audit firms is, what is the welfare of our people? And in this, we really should be taking a lead from our president, who from day one has prioritized life over commerce and said, you want to have an economy, but you must be alive to begin with so that you can participate in that economy. And I think the same holds true for us, that there are not very many audits that we can actually do if we're ill, if we're unwell, if we are distressed. So I think that by far the most important thing for audit firms, for practitioners, is to make sure that we're looking after ourselves, to make sure that we're looking after our people, and we're putting safety first and foremost, and appreciating that once people feel safe, once working conditions are provided that are sensible and right, people will respond with comfort, people will respond with enthusiasm, and the work will continue, because at the end of the day, there's only so much relaxation you can have. I think we've all been there, done that. You're in the house for 3 straight days, the first time you've done that in 20 years, and you're beginning to feel all sorts of things that are unfamiliar. And therefore, people want to be busy, but we need to create the right environment for them to be busy. And once we begin to engage and to deliver work, we want to be able to put in place the protocols that allow us to work and engage in the right way. We've had to, I'm sure all practitioners have had to make available certain facilities like airtime and data to allow teams to communicate in ways that they didn't have to communicate before. We have to worry about, when it comes to our audit work, to understand, we normally go and meet a client, for example, have our initial meeting, we normally discuss with the client, understand the business, understand development, and then also we would typically want to understand the controls. And for many of our organizations, for some of the organizations, we will typically focus on a very substantive audit. But even when we do a substantive audit, you remember that auditing standards will require that we get a basic understanding of risks and a basic understanding of controls and an evaluation of those controls. Under COVID, and the nature of the way that COVID lockdown was implemented in Uganda was by surprise. It therefore meant that nobody was able to put in place preparatory sort of measures, other than those organizations that were fortunate enough to have begun a degree of self-imposed lockdown prior to the government lockdown. What that means that we were not prepared for it. What that meant was that a lot of organizations have found themselves having to cope in terms of maintaining business as usual under the COVID scenario. Excuse me. I hope I didn't sit like our dear president, but if I did, it's not a bad sign at all. The challenge that we then have, the real challenge on a practical basis, is what is the effectiveness of internal controls during lockdown? What is the effectiveness of internal controls being implemented by management in this period of half measures, in this period of temporary measures, in this period of workarounds? So does the client have the right technology? Can you trust that technology? For example, if your client has been approving transactions electronically, was the system set up to do so, or they're simply doing it by email, or they're doing it by text message or WhatsApp message. You know, if we're not doing it before, what sort of email and communication systems are they using? Is the client using Gmail and Yahoo Mail and all sorts of public internet or email addresses, as opposed to a corporate and managed email service provider? And therefore, in short, can you rely on those controls? And if you're not able to rely on them, more importantly, what on earth are you possibly going to do to get the comfort that you need to get about the matters that you need to audit? So controls reliance becomes a very, very tricky issue, but also controls understanding is also very, very important, because even if you don't plan to rely on controls, an understanding of what controls are in operation or what controls can be relied upon is important to be able to design a responsive, substantive audit to design responsive substantive audit procedures. So if we knew that our client did not have previously relied on manual records, they now no longer have access to the system, we begin to ask ourselves, how are you maintaining the books on a day-to-day basis? What numbers are you presenting to us to audit? Do those numbers add up? And do we even have a basis for audit? Should we even begin the audit to begin with? In my own experience, we've had to deal with those types of issues. A lot of audits have had to be postponed so that clients can get ready and to provide a decent basis for beginning the audit. So I think those are very, very important considerations. The other considerations have been really around understanding the impact of COVID on clients, in terms of the impact on liquidity, the impact on cash flow, how does that impact the overall going concern of the entities, and a lot has been written about that, and I really want to refer members to the papers that have been prepared by various bodies. This particular paper, I suppose people can see that, will include quite a bit of write-up regarding things like going concern. But maybe if I go to that, I'll just speak briefly to these issues around liquidity, around going concern, around recognized amounts in the financial statements. So as auditors, we've had to, and we need to continue looking at basic asset valuation. If your client has stopped operations altogether, then the valid question is whether or not the value of those assets remains sufficient, appropriate. If they're non-financial assets, we typically expect that there will be the appropriate measure is the lower of the carrying amount and the recoverable amount. So COVID brings to question the recoverable amount, which is going to be the higher of value in use and what is the fair value less cost to sell. Now, we're in an environment where there ought to be few buyers, although somebody has claimed that people are buying more cars in COVID than they've done before. But we would expect a depressed real estate market, we would expect depressed sales for many businesses other than those in essential services. And therefore, under those circumstances, the question of recoverability of assets is a very valid question. And without knowing when the lockdown will be lifted, it becomes a particularly sensitive question that we need to address with management early on. There's a tendency and a weakness in our market that quite often when we ask the questions, we almost automatically start to answer the questions ourselves rather than leave management to answer those questions. To be quite clever at making us feel like we're the experts. But in actual fact, we might be experts in many things, but we're definitely not the expert in running the business. So in terms of, so there needs to be very early engagement with management for us to share our expectation that management has evaluated the impact of COVID on their business. They've understood and they've worked out, even with limited information available, what the potential scenarios are going to be. If lockdown is lifted, if social distance remains, if restrictions on public gathering remains, for how long, what will be the impact on the business, how the business remain afloat, and equally importantly, or more importantly, how the business reignite, how the business restart once the conditions return to a degree of normality. I was at at a hotel not too long ago, and just saw all this equipment that has been put away in storage because of COVID. And whether it's refrigerators, whether it's tables and chairs, and a lot of it is getting spoiled. And not because somebody came and set it on fire, but because it's not being used and it's not being well looked after, because everybody went home all of a sudden. So asset value recoverability is an issue. We need to look at various measurement requirements of various accounting standards. Look at impairment for financial assets as well is a big issue, as well as even things like revenue recognition. Where revenue has been recognized, where revenue is being recognized in lockdown, we would expect that the pressure for fraud in revenue increases because of lockdown, because every single business is under pressure, more pressure to actually show a measure of resilience in as far as COVID is concerned, and therefore the temptation to be aggressive and to be creative in our revenue schemes is likely to be higher. We've also seen that certain businesses have gone and put in place temporary measures like discounts. So if you look at your mobile money charges, they were waived for a period of time. They've now come back in at a discount. Has the system actually been reconfigured to ensure that those adjustments are being reflected in the books and records? Or does the system continue to accrue revenue at the standard rates that have been set up in the system? And equally, if it's a manual system, and the relevant changes being made to cope. So I think there's a lot to be said around that, and the time that we have doesn't allow us to go into the details of it. And this is where I would appeal to members to make use of the Q&A. We will endeavor to answer the questions that are put to us today, and those questions that are able to answer because of the time, we'll endeavor to answer them in writing and have them shared with through the Institute. I would like to again, remind members of just comments about the resources that ISPAU has put together. Please make use of them. I've also been told by Marco Mona that they've fielded quite a lot of queries from practitioners on various issues, and I think I would encourage members to continue to make use of those resources. I think we do have a very capable technical team at the Institute, and they should be able to provide valuable guidance to us. So I think there's quite a bit to be said about going concern. From a reporting perspective, let me just make this quick comment before I move on to the next topic. And I'm really quoting from the ISB paper here. I hope people can see that, where they are bringing to light the question of our ability to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence during COVID, purely because we don't have access to things like stock counts, purely because, for example, we would have gone to audit a branch in Arua, we would have gone to audit a branch in Masaka, but we're not able to travel. So members mustn't feel under pressure to provide clean opinions under impossible circumstances. The other areas where we the degree of considerations that is required are the disclosures, particularly around COVID, understanding that COVID for December year-ends would have been a subsequent event. For the March year-ends, it's a relevant event because lockdown in Uganda came in towards the end of March, and we had the pandemic declared in January. So what are the disclosures that have been made? Are they adequate? Are they reasonable? Are they backed up by evidence? And then where we have to report on key audit matters, maybe before that, let me mention the issue of going concern. We've mentioned the risk of going concern being heightened. Fortunately, we've not yet seen any massive sort of corporate insolvencies coming up in the market as yet, but we do know that liquidity is a real worry. And therefore, it's important that we gather sufficient evidence on going concern. And where we're not able to get that evidence, where the evidence suggests that there are material uncertainties, to ensure that the usual disclosures are made by management. Where those disclosures are not made, then we have a duty to include those uncertainties in our auditor's reports. Where the uncertainty is not mitigated, again, we need to make sure that we report in accordance with the relevant standard, particularly around an emphasis of matter on going concern, or indeed whether or not the financial statements have been prepared on an appropriate basis. The other matter that has been explored quite a bit is around key audit matters. And really here, just to mention very briefly that where we're required to report key audit matters, where we have significant issues arising because of COVID-19, then it's quite likely that those will also be significant or key audit matters. For example, we're not able to obtain sufficient information. For example, there's a going concern issue related to COVID-19, or there are material uncorrected misstatements related to COVID-19, and the clarification that ISP has provided is for us to think clearly about the intersection between key audit matters and matters for qualification. So if an issue such as going concern would be a key audit matter that is also a matter for qualification, then we'd only deal with it as a qualification, and there is very good guidance from ISB in as far as this is concerned. This guidance I'll share with ISPAU to share with members because this is a public document, unlike the slides which I wasn't able to share with you. So I will now move on to the next segment of the topic that I was asked to speak to, and that is on the new quality control standards, ISQM 1 and ISQM 2. Now, as far as this is concerned, I just want to give members some assurance that I'm not telling them stories about the slides I had prepared for you by showing you something very brief, and then I won't be able to keep showing it, unfortunately, because of the restrictions that I have. Okay, so these are slides that I was able to get from this facility on the internet that were prepared by ISB, by the task force for these quality control standards. Unfortunately, I won't be able to share them with you. I know some of you have home phones and you take screenshots and things like that. Please don't. Otherwise, we could all be in trouble. But I promise that once we get, in fact, because I've shared with you the link, you're all now able to go to that link and you can look at those slides as I go through them very, very quickly. So what's happening with ISQM 1? Members will be familiar with ISQC1, International Standard for Quality Control for firms that issue audit financial statements, historical financial statements, or financial, yeah. Now, ISQC1 has been re-evaluated in light of the global financial crisis, in light of the heightened scrutiny and increased focus on audit quality based on the fallout. You remember that after the financial crisis, a lot of established firms gave way. Lehman Brothers is normal. A lot of firms went through quite a lot of stress, and many went through extended sort of government bailouts, highly unpopular, and obviously it was necessary to do something. A lot of legislators, a lot of regulators then had to act and have acted and continue to act. And equally, our professional member body or standard setting body has equally acted to try and get to the grips of what, if anything, can be done to deal with these challenges. Now, as we know, the first phase of what we saw in that was the enhanced auditor reporting standards, which provided for more disclosure. And additional work was then done to identify what other changes were needed to make things better. So there's been a lot of dialogue with regulators and the market and other stakeholders in general, giving rise to leading us to where we're at, to where we have exposure drafts that were issued in February. So 3 exposure drafts were issued: ISQM 1, quality management for firms that perform audits or reviews of financial statements or other assurance-related services engagements; ISQM 2 on engagement quality reviews; and then ISA 220 revised, quality management for an audit of financial statements. There's a fairly long period provided for comments, and I'm very happy to say that our own institute provided very, very good quality comments on that particular these particular standards, and in fact those comments are available on the ISB website for you to review, to understand how well represented we were by our institute in as far as these new standards are concerned. So what are the issues that ISP is trying to resolve with these proposed standards. And I have to say that from, and maybe I'll come to that in a slide in a minute or two, but yes, the exposure drafts were issued in February 2019. Between February and June 2019, there were a series of engagements and a comment period. And this is the period where ISB did these particular presentations that I'm borrowing from to explain where they're coming from. And 1st July is when the comment letters were due. And these were very, very highly responded to. The intention was that by spring 2020, around March 2020, between June and March 2020, that the standards would be finalized. I think those timelines have been messed up by COVID, and I've not seen anything to suggest what the new timelines are. I don't think anybody necessarily knows what those new timelines are, but the intention is that the new standards will be applicable from 2021. And then therefore, that original intention puts the timing very, very close to us. So the expected anticipated effective date was December 2021, and I imagine that that means that you know, that initial expecting, and I think IFAC was also quite, ISB was quite honest. I said this was an anticipated effective date of that 1st December 2021. That timing will probably have to change, but what it does illustrate is that we don't have a lot of time on our hands. So what is new? What is the whole idea behind these standards? It is they've identified a need for governance and leadership responsibilities and accountability for quality at a firm level, at an audit firm level, to be enhanced. They found a need for better monitoring of the entire system of quality control, not just by performing engagement inspections, but to monitor the entire system of quality control and look at it in a fairly holistic manner, the way we look at ARM for our clients. There's been a lot of concern with the results of external inspections. And when you're in a Big Four firm, you will know that quite often the results are quite scathing of Big Four firms. When you're a smaller firm, you might enjoy the glee for a minute and say, look at them, they think they're big, but they're in trouble. But then you might also think about your own situation and think, well, if they're big and they're struggling and having those types of issues, what about the rest of us? And I think the stakeholders are saying we're honest because the regulators typically only focus, monitor, and review or inspect audits for listed companies. And the question then is, what's happening to the rest of the population if this is what we're seeing for listed companies? There's also been a need to just go back to identify the causal factors. Root cause analysis is something that we will see quite a lot of, to make sure that we do understand what is the real why we have failed to maintain quality. Beyond the, you know, we didn't have enough time. Why didn't we have enough time? And so on and so forth. Okay. And there are some other matters, and one of the other issues is around scalability. To what extent can the standards be applied by SMPs? And I think that is something that my colleague James will also speak about this afternoon. Okay. So ISR 2020 revisions are included in these proposed slides, but I'll not speak about because it was not asked to do so. So, what is new? What is new is that ISQC1 did lay out some principles, and it laid out a process for us to manage quality. What has been introduced that is quite deliberate is a risk-based approach. And it's a risk-based approach that is required to be more robust. As I said, it's required to be more encompassing and embedded in the way that a firm is managed, as opposed to something that you come to do, say, on Monday mornings or once every 3 years, but it's something that is embedded into what you do every day. And it's required to be proactive, and it's required to be scalable to the circumstances of the firm at a particular point in time, and not just something that is quite static, that you only change once a year, and so on and so forth. Now, in this proposed standard, 8 components have been identified for the firm system of quality management, starting with governance and leadership, and then we have some that are already familiar. Relevant ethical requirements is familiar from ISQC1. Acceptance and continuance is familiar from ISQC1. Engagement performance is familiar from ISQC1. Resources will be familiar, human resources or human capital. But now what we do have that are more of the things that are typically present in a risk management framework is the risk assessment process, a process for monitoring and remediation of exceptions, as well as information and communication. Where ISB, I believe, have been quite clever is to say, you need to comply with, this is a framework that you need to comply with, but it's up to you to determine how you want to comply with it. It is not a one-size-fits-all. You don't have to have separate pockets where you look at all these different 8 components. You can combine one or more of these components and look at them together, if that's what makes sense for you as a firm, but make sure you cover everything. They also don't stop you from introducing additional items that you believe are necessary for purposes of managing quality in your firm. So it's a much more scalable, much more customizable, and the idea for it is that it can fit every size of audit firm. So risk assessment process should really be, it's very intuitive, understand what your quality objective is, which is ultimately to comply with the quality control standard, the quality management standard, establish objectives that support that, identify and assess the risks to you meeting quality, those quality objectives, and then you design and implement responses to ensure that you're able to mitigate those risks. Where, again, ISB have been very clever in my view is by saying, we will not define for you what the risks are, because we acknowledge you might be a sole practitioner. You might be operating with one client. You could be operating in a network. You could be operating in multiple offices and so on and so forth. Your circumstances will be different. So we're not going to identify for you quality risks. You go and identify those quality risks. And what they're also saying that is quite helpful is to say, get a measure of the level of risk by considering the magnitude of its impact and the likelihood of the occurrence. So if you have a higher magnitude, but no likelihood of occurrence, it's a risk you might decide is not worth pursuing. If on the other hand, it's high risk, rather high magnitude, high likelihood of occurrence, you must definitely give that priority. So that you don't end up capturing every single risk that there is in the universe, but you focus on those risks that are important to you as an audit firm. Okay. Now, allow me just a minute. I've just realized that I can share something with members to follow. And as far as this is concerned, because this is the public document. So a lot of the things that I've been speaking to are available within the standard itself. These are the 8 principles, the 8 components of the system of quality management: monitoring and remediation, risk assessment, governance and leadership, and so on and so forth. Those are the components or the elements which are required to be considered by member firms. In terms of the objective of the firm, as I've mentioned, again, it's illustrated quite clearly here: design and implement a system of quality management. The objective of the system of quality management is to provide you with reasonable assurance that the firm and its personnel fulfill their responsibilities in accordance with professional standards and applicable legal and regulatory requirements, and conduct engagements in accordance with such standards and requirements. Number 2, that the engagement reports issued by firm or engagement partners are appropriate in the circumstances. Those are the objectives, not very different from ISQC1. It is really how you get there that is changing. Okay. My screen is blinking quite a bit because I'm probably moving too fast. But this is what I'm trying to display here is the sort of top-down process. Having established your quality objectives is to ensure that you're issuing quality reports and you're complying with relevant professional standards and requirements. You then want to identify and assess quality risks, and then you design and implement responses. I will I will give that a moment to settle down. Let me give that a moment to settle down as I continue to speak to this. So, so generally speaking, that is the process that we should go through to identify risks. I've spoken about the assessment that is required to determine the most significant risks, and those significant risks are the ones that we should go ahead to document and to design measures to ensure that risk objectives are actually met. Okay, and that's really it in as far as ISQM is concerned. What I've not really covered there, which was not covered in the particular slides that I was reviewing, but is covered in the ISB paper, is the discussion around what happens when you now define your measures. Once you've identified the risks, you then say, do you have sufficient controls in place as things stand to mitigate those risks? If you don't have the measures in place, you're then required to develop those responses. Okay. Now there's an interplay with ISQM2, which is the one for performing engagement quality reviews, where you find exceptions, you must then perform a root cause analysis to identify the real reasons why you have failed to achieve quality, so that you can find a solution. And I want to suggest to members that from experience, my personal experience is that this is probably the most difficult part when it comes to quality control and quality management. We will quite often be able to say, this did not happen because, well, we didn't document the work, but it was done. The question is, why didn't you document the work having done it? And the question might be, we didn't have enough time. The question is, why didn't you not have enough time? So you go through that iterative process until you find the underlying issue that is at hand, so that you can then find a solution to it. And all of that is to be documented as part of your system of quality management. So it's altogether more demanding, it's altogether more thorough, and it is something that members need to be very alert for to ensure that it's addressed the correct way and the appropriate way in order for it to continue to meet quality standards for your firm and to meet stakeholder expectations. ISQM2, very, very briefly, is really about clarifying these leadership responsibilities for quality at the engagement level and making it very, very clear what the expectations are of engagement partners. Bringing back to the fore the role of the engagement quality control reviewer and making it clear how we should collaborate and work with the engagement quality control reviewer on our engagements. So there's very clear explanations of the role of the EL, the engagement leader, and what the engagement leader needs to do to ensure that they're providing adequate supervision. They are planning to provide that supervision on a timely basis. They are paying clear attention to the competence and capabilities of the team and ensuring that the team have sufficient time to do the work. They are spending the time required to review work done on significant areas, on significant judgments, and ultimately exercising judgment and ensuring that sufficient work has been done. So that is an enhancement or clarification being provided so that everybody understands what is the role of the engagement leader, what are they required to do. Some of it will not necessarily be new, a lot of it will be things that we're already doing. The question for us is going to be to ensure that we can actually demonstrate we're actually doing it on engagement files, and that is not always easy. And again, members can imagine, how are you doing that in a COVID environment? How do you do that in an environment where you don't have physical access to files, or the physical access to files involves them being ferried from Chireka to Namasua for somebody to sign, from Namasua to your home in Pololo for you to sign, and so on and so forth. So those are some of the challenges that we also bear in mind even as we contemplate the new standards that are on the horizon. Okay. Mr. Mutimba, allow me to pause here. I'm conscious of the time. I think I might be able to take a few questions before I unfortunately have to leave to deal with the commitment at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CPA Uthman Mayanja. Ladies and gentlemen, like we indicated at the beginning, CPA Mayanja will be leaving us for summer engagement. But probably before you go, there are just a couple of questions here, about 2-3 questions for you. People wish to hear from you, at least from a practical sense of view, and from a perspective of a big firm, a big four. The first question relates to audit procedures around stock count. Ernest would wish to hear from you if he is performing audits that are basically field-based. For example, audits that involve visiting different branches of a particular client in up-country locations. How could they perform stock counts in such an era? He would wish to hear the perspective of, for example, your firm. Then two, from my sister Pisia, she seeks to hear from you how the internal audit function can evolve in this period of the pandemic. She's aware that external auditors, you practitioners, at some point you place some reliance on work of internal auditors. You do engage them during your work. So how could they evolve during this period? And then the last one, from Amos, he wishes to have a practical experiences from you on how to apply professional skepticism during the period of COVID-19. Those are the questions, CPA Mayanja.
Thank you very much, Charles, and thank you, members, for posting those questions. I will attempt to answer each of those questions as briefly as possible, and then I will wait for Charles to give me feedback on whether or not we did them justice or needed further clarification. So I think we have a situation of where we're not able to, for example, perform a physical stock count during the lockdown. Then we go back to the standards and what they allow us to do. Already a situation where you're not able to do a stock count at, for example, the year end has been with us as an issue, where we typically then consider the earliest date at which you can perform that physical stock count. For example, now that there is reasonable movement allowed, we could go in and do a stock count after the period end, but then we'd have to perform rollback procedures to reconcile the stock on the date of the count back to the stock at the date of the year-end date. Now, that is an easier process to carry out. For example, if the client has a record of performing cyclical counts or monthly stock counts, where they will typically be performing those types of reconciliation, it will not necessarily work for every client. It will also still require that the client has very good records of the movements from year-end and the date of the count that is actually performed. So that is normally one way that we can go about performing getting comfort on year-end stock. The other way, again, depending on the type of organization we have, the nature of the stock that they have, we might be in a position to rely on other procedures. For example, subsequent sales of stock can give us a degree of comfort. Again, that will depend on the quality of the records that the client has. So that you can ask questions like how long the stock is selling now was not for year-end, and that sort of thing. You also remember that you might be able to get confirmation that stock exists by testing balances like payables. So again, depending on the nature of organization that you have, let's assume that I'm a reseller of mattresses, and that's called business. I resell mattresses and I've got one major supplier of mattresses. Then the completeness of my inventory can be corroborated by the completeness of my payables. And remember, with payables, you'll be seeking comfort that there is no understatement. So the moment you're comfortable that all payables have been captured, then by default, the debits must have been captured, somehow. And you then want to make sure that they are captured correctly between stock and cost of sales. Then you're able to perform things like gross margin analytics, and other types of procedures that can give you comfort that actually the cost of sales is fairly stated, and therefore by inference, your R&D stock is also fairly stated. So it's important. There are a number of alternative procedures that one can consider. It's difficult to say what you should do in a given situation, but I hope that that gives you some pointers as to how you could go about such a situation. Internal audit, very tricky and very difficult to say how should internal audit evolve during the times of the pandemic. I think the lesson for everybody, the lesson for internal audit is the same as the lesson for all other operations. How do you operate remotely? How do you operate with thin boots on the ground? What should your role be anyway? Because I think that's the biggest question for internal audit. What has your role been before? And what should your future role be like? When should you be performing that role? How should you be reporting and to whom? I think those are all legitimate questions for internal audit to ask during the pandemic, and very, very critical questions as well. The issue of the typical issue internal audit will face is availability of people. It's the same as external audit. People are available to you when you need them. Is your team available when you need them? So there are the same challenges that external auditors will have. Is the quality of the evidence good? The only thing is external auditor can sit back and say, I'm waiting for you to finish compiling the information before I come to audit. Internal audit cannot wait until the organization sorts itself out. So for internal audit, you may actually have to go in and perform audits, even when you know that things are still messy. And perhaps it's not so much to perform all the audits that are there to be performed, but to get a good understanding of where are we at, what issues are we facing. Are we in a situation where controls are completely breaking down, or in a situation where we can actually help, even before doing a report, to engage management and say we must think about fixing the following loopholes and so on and so forth. That would be my attempt at internal audit. Even ISPAU knows that I'm not an internal audit expert. They never invite me to speak about internal audit, but I hope it provides some pointers for you, Madam. The final question is on professional skepticism. It is more important than ever that external auditors and internal auditors exercise professional skepticism because of things like the quality of evidence that we're seeing. A lot of the evidence we might see may not be, for example, we normally talk about those of us that did our exams in ancient times. We say, you know, and external evidence is better than internal evidence, original copies are better than photocopies, but we're now living in the world of scanning documents and so on and so forth. So we must exercise that professional skepticism. And in fact, one of the areas coming out of the new quality management standards is actually to say, increase your professional skepticism. Understand why it has been difficult for you to exercise professional skepticism. Ask the difficult questions so that don't be afraid to ask the difficult questions. Even when clients say, I don't know when COVID will end, I don't have the treatment for COVID, I didn't cause COVID, and all sorts of stories that clients give us as auditors, we must still stay the course and ensure that we remain professional and ensure that we get the evidence that we need. But it's very, very important. Again, it's very difficult to say exercise professional skepticism in this manner, but I think we must maintain that questioning approach that evaluates evidence in light of whether or not it actually makes sense. The supporting documents might be there, but do we actually understand it? And I think that basic thing to understand, as somebody put it, explain it to me as if you explain it to a 5-year-old. What is really going on here is the kind of discipline that I would encourage you to have during this period. And unfortunately, Mr. Moderator and ladies and gentlemen, I really have to go now in order to deal with another obligation. But I want to thank you very much for allowing me to share with you my 2 cents. And I hope that it has been of some benefit. And I'll be more than happy to pick up additional questions that may arise through ISPAU. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, CPA Uthman. You've really been so handy on this. We thank you greatly for his sharing or wishing to share with the fraternity. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a moment we let Uthman go, but allow CPA Musabe to give us a perspective. I know when Uthman speaks from the other side of the big four, some members may believe those are procedures, those are practices that should be embraced by the big guys. Let us now have a word, experiences and practical considerations from a small and medium practitioner to share with us the challenges and how he believes the SMPs should evolve throughout this pandemic. Yes, CPA James Musabe, Managing Partner from JP Madison. May you please take us through your presentation. Yes, James, I hand over to you.
Yep, getting there. Yes. CPA team, are you picking me up?
Yeah, sure. We can view the slides. You probably put them in the full screen.
Want to run the slideshows first? It okay now?
It should be somewhere on closer to the percentage, the lower bottom.
Yes, I've run it, but are you viewing it?
I can view it, but not in the presentation mode.
Sure.
Yes.
I run it again.
Sure.
Are you getting it?
I can view the slides, but not in the presentation. I wanted them in full screen.
Yes, it is now showing full screen on my side.
We can proceed. We can proceed.
Or we stop the share and I'll share it again.
Perfect now. It's perfect.
Good.
Sure.
Thank you all members. My name is James Musabe, as already introduced. We will be looking at a number of issues, particularly relating to audit quality, looking at the perspective of the small, medium practice. CPA commonly calls us SMPs, but I think they should also add there an M to look for the micro, because others are too small. You are forgetting us. So we should be looking at micro, small, and medium practices, because others are actually still starting. I would want to throw some light first on some issues that Usman was dealing with before I can forget it. Then after that, we shall dig into the slides. Looking at the practical aspects of COVID-19 and how we are coping up, or how small firms are trying to cope up. First, there was an issue of signing of these audit reports. That's one of the key challenges that firms are facing, because CPA requires us to seal these audit reports. And our seal is manual. Ideally, you can say the seal is analog, but we are operating in the digital form. So we have to seal them. How have I been surviving? Maybe others have been surviving in their own way. I have been running these reports on motorbikes. So basically, hire someone with a motorbike, runs around with it to the client, who signs it. He carries back to me the representation and the financial statements. I'll get them signed and sealed, and then they are sent to the client. The other option is where, once the client has agreed with the accounts, he will print and sign those pages that need his signatures, and then scan them over to me. Then I will also sign my side, do the necessaries, and then scan it to the client. Then later on, when now things are easy, for example, now we are able to take them the physical documentation. Someone asked a question about stock take, where you are unable to take stock take. I'm thinking for clients that you are able to do some form of stock taking, you could then rely on analytical reviews for at least maybe the last quarter or the month. Because there are clients that actually do stock take on a monthly basis. There are those that do it on a quarterly basis. So you can do analytical reviews for some of these matters, and then you are able to comfortably think that maybe stock is existing around that time. And also do analysis of the sales units. Because in most cases, if there are more sales units, you should be able to reconcile the sales units with the stock balances and then the purchases, what was recorded as spoiled. All those are issues where you can do more analytical reviews, which we will call substantive analytical reviews, to satisfy yourself that reasonably stock could have been existing. And where you think you are still uncomfortable, then you can go to the reporting standard and you got a paragraph relating to stock. Although in most cases, such a paragraph clients don't want them, but if you're the fix, actually, you may have to borrow that. There are issues to do with the quality. Should COVID-19 affect audit quality? The answer is actually no. So we should find ways of making sure that the audit quality is still achieved. Why? Audit quality does not only have an impact on the client, but also has an impact on you as a firm. If the client happened to sink and you signed the audit report, you may end up following some of our good audit firms, following where they went, simply because the client wanted his report urgently. The other thing that we need to look at that will affect us practically is where clients have key staff that are supposed to facilitate the audit, but these staffs are locked up abroad. A director is locked up abroad, or a key staff is locked up abroad, so the audit can't continue. So the best is to postpone such audits up to a time when you are comfortable than wanting to do something because the client wants to file or the client wants to make a certain report, and so you issue when you have not really obtained sufficient audit evidence. So those are some of the few things that I want us to look at following Usman's presentation, but looking at it from the perspective of the SMPs. You'll agree with me that most of our clients will be micro entities, there'll be small entities or medium-sized entities. These entities may not have as much systems, stronger systems, like those clients of the big fours would pride on. So when you talk of testing of internal controls, to rely on internal controls to justify stock, some of these clients have no internal controls. So you can't test internal controls and it's an opinion. You definitely have to look at some paperwork, you have to look at some physicals. So those are things that we have to live with. So I may now dig into my presentation. Basically, I want to look at achieving, improving, and or maintaining audit quality, but focusing on the perspective of an SMP. The question will be, can an SME achieve quality? Can an SMP offer quality audits? In most cases, people have wrongly misinterpreted it. They think big equals quality, but sometimes big may not necessarily be quality. Small actually may be the quality. So let's dig into this. We are going to look at the coverage. Introduction and brief thoughts on audit quality. Then we'll look at why audit quality. Is it anyway important? Why should we consider it? key initiatives for achieving, improving, and maintaining audit quality. What can we do so that we move towards achieving this audit quality? How can we improve, and how can we maintain audit quality? Then we start going to conclusions and reactions. In the interest of time, I want to say that I assumed that all the participants on this webinar have the knowledge of financial reporting frameworks. They understand the legal requirements for audits. They understand the requirements of ISAs and other regulations around the profession. So I won't dig into that. I will only look at the aspects relating to audit quality, assuming all other things are constant and applicable. We will appreciate that in recent years, the turbulent environments in this, that's what I mean, that good, the turbulent environments, events in the global financial crisis have dramatically highlighted the importance of credible, high quality financial reporting and supported by high quality auditing. The word quality auditing or quality financial reporting is something that has continued to happen and something that everyone is demanding. The one who understands what quality is and those who don't understand what quality is will ask for quality audits. The issue of audit quality has continued to be emerging rapidly across the globe. Constant changes from legal, regulatory, and standard setting bodies constantly bombarding the accountancy professions, calling for improving of audit quality has actually continued to be a burden for most of the SMPs. The unfortunate part of it is that as SMPs, we have no way out. It is a profession that we chose, and very definitely we have to be there. We have to develop shock absorbers for absorbing those missiles that come from the legal and the regulator side. What is audit quality? There are no universally agreed upon definitions of audit quality. We shall all agree to that. You can't easily define that this is high quality, this is low quality, this is average quality. In most cases, that's not the case. We don't have settled measures or benchmarks against which to measure audit quality. It is difficult for prospective clients and other stakeholders to look into the prospective audit firm and judge whether they will achieve or obtain an audit that is quality. Most of the reasons because an audit's elements are often complex and hard to measure. You will agree with me that much of the audit relies on the process of the audit. So if the process of the audit is wrong, definitely the audit will be wrong. If the process of the audit is marked with a lot of issues, then definitely the audit will also have issues. The key thing is the process. And much of these things are actually invisible to the client, and even more so to the financial statement users. What they look at most is the printout that you have offered to the management or to the users of these financial statements. Indeed, the only outward visible signs of a potentially poor quality audit include the following. 1, financial statement restatements, where financial statements are restated over and over. It could be a sign that the audit is not properly done. Reissues of audit reports basically means that the first audit report was based on an incomplete piece of work. Regulatory investigations into the work that may also affect Because if they start investigating your piece of work, it may be a sign that things are not okay. We have seen most of the firms, other firms were basically not in this country, but abroad, such a firms are being investigated. Why the investigation? That would mean the piece of work may not have been well. Therefore, bearing in mind that there are no universally agreed upon definitions of high or low quality, in audits, we can roughly or loosely say that high quality audits would involve the following. One, an audit that has involved arithmetic and objective assessment of the entity systems, accounting processes, and financial statements prepared by management in accordance with the applicable financial reporting standards. Where we are currently with this COVID-19, some of these systems, particularly for new clients, may be very difficult to evaluate if you are unable to travel there. For example, if you are in clients where, if you have clients and they are new, you have never visited them before, but they are in locked up districts, for example, now in Uganda, evaluating such a systems may be very difficult. But again, you must still find a way of looking through them. We have technology now is what you must use in this case. We have issues to do with the AnyDesk, TeamViewer, try to engage such a people on telephone and recording such a messages and discussion that you're having with them to at least have a level of comfort of what is happening. An audit that is performed by a qualified and regulated independent accountancy firm in accordance with applicable laws and regulations. Such an audit, if it has complied with the ISAs, it has complied with the legal requirements relating to aspects of an audit, then you would roughly assume that it is a quality audit. An audit that has achieved the fundamental objective of obtaining reasonable assurance that the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement through obtaining appropriate audit evidence. That audit evidence must be appropriate and must be sufficient. Ideally, we are looking at the quantity of the evidence and also the quality of the evidence. If that audit has ensured material deficiencies, if the audit has ensured the material deficiencies detected, addressed, or communicated as required by the ISAs or laws in accordance with the auditor's findings, has included appropriately challenging key accounting policies, treatments, and estimates that can materially affect the reported financial position and results. In this area, most auditors would want to look for evidence to support their conclusion. Ideally, an auditor, first of all, makes a conclusion that the financial statements are not materially misstated. Then works backwards to try and look for audit evidence to put on the file that will justify that things are okay. In such a case, you shall not have challenged the accounting policies, those treatments and estimates, the assumptions that management has used. Your job is to challenge them until you are comfortably assured that truly it can be supported. In most cases, we need to test it. My key consideration is that if CPA challenged me on this file, am I able to support it? These are some of the things I look at. Ask if another person looked at my piece of work, am I able to explain it? Am I happy with this piece of work? And if you are not, it means you may need to look further. Something may need to be done. This view is consistent with the objective of the audit under ISA 200, where we say that the overall objective of the independent auditor is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are not misstated. Reasonable assurance. You may not get 100% because you are not carrying out a fraud investigation, a forensic audit here, but at least you must be comfortably satisfied that you are at least above 70 or above 80% of the financial statements are not misstated. This is my feeling that audit quality is demonstrated through compliance with the legal requirements impacting audits. We look at the ISAs and your own internal firm policies. If you can demonstrate that you have complied with all of those ones, then I believe that you will have demonstrated audit quality. We know that we are all required to have professional indemnity, the insurance companies. There might even be other accountants in those insurance companies that are here on this webinar. In most cases, when the professional indemnity is invoked, they can't just pay because the client has claimed. They will have to review your work. Did you comply with what you are supposed to do? Did you comply with the professional standards? What are the legal requirements? Did you comply? What are your firm policies? Did you comply? And if you have complied with all of those, then the chances are that actually you may be indemnified. Otherwise, they may ask you to dig into your pockets. And we all know that SMPs don't have such a huge stocks of reserves from which to pay some of these clients. The very reason why we should do more work, ensure quality, as opposed to the big fours because they have the reserves. Sometimes they may dig into the reserves and pay off the claim. Another question, can one achieve audit quality? The answer is yes. However, I'm quick to add that unlike a tangible piece of furniture, gold, or copper, the exact nature of audit quality changes over time. You can't say we achieved it last year, so everything is okay. The audit quality will change with each audit engagement, with each audit team that we are using. One audit team will achieve it, another will fail. So you have to continue working. It's an evolving process, on and on. It's an activity that evolves with today's business. You might have had a client that had a very good accountant in the previous year. Now the accountant is changed. It means you are going to have poor input into your audit quality, your audit process, because the material coming from the accountant side may not be of high quality. That information that you absorb into your audit process. In such a case, you need to put in more effort. So as standards change, technology change, staff and business environments change, all of these impact audit quality and how firms can practically achieve the audit quality. This means that the pursuit of audit quality never ends. It is not a fixed goal with a definitive outcome. So you are ever moving and changing. So you should evolve as you move on. In the interest of time, I'll skip other matters, but the good thing is that these slides will be coming over to you and we'll continue to engage. We'll answer some questions as we move on. I wouldn't want you to be caught up by curfew and traffic jam. I want us to run early. Then, if one can achieve audit quality, what about the client perspective of audit quality? We as clients can achieve audit quality from our auditors, and we as auditors can also offer quality audits to our clients. From the perspective of the client, the best option is to align yourself with an audit firm that keeps itself deeply immersed in the ever-changing world of the profession and your industry. the firm must be able to understand your industry. They must be interested in the profession, and they are working towards it. By so doing, you know that they are always at the edge of the development within the profession, and most likely you won't be caught off guard. A high quality audit can come from an audit firm of any size. That's one of the things that I want the accountants in the industry and the clients that are listening today to understand. Quality may not always be the size of the firm. It may be a small firm, it can be a solo proprietor, it may be a sole practitioner, but it's possible that they can deliver quality audit once they are prepared to deliver it. It is not necessarily true that the larger firm provides high quality audit as opposed to SMPs. Then when it comes to fees, the larger firms are offered huge fees, and the SMPs, they get some smaller peanuts for the same job. Much more is involved than just the size of the firm. That's one thing that the clients do look at. From the side of the audit firm, you can still achieve audit quality, one, by aligning yourself with those clients that value professionalism, understand the industry, and they value the continued existence of their entities as opposed to those that shop for your signature. I think there are some clients that after when they hear you have signed the audit report, they can run around and have a glass of juice because they know you have covered a few things for them. So you need to ensure that you only deal with those clients that are quality, the ones that you actually believe you will do for them a good job. I continue to say that you are not supposed to be an auditor for all clients in this world. No, and not for Uganda. That's one of my principles. I don't audit everybody, and we are not here to audit everyone. We only audit those that we think their values will actually encourage professionalism. Remember that audit quality is required from audit firms of all sizes. So there's no claim of saying me I'm small, me I'm micro, I'm medium, so this audit quality is for the big firms. No, it's for all of us. And it's required by the audit standards. The other thing the audit firm should do is to purpose to achieve audit quality. Work for it and keep moving towards it. As it changes, you are also moving. It's very possible, and you can always make it. Why audit quality? We know that the financial statement users, in most cases, do not dig into the detailed aspects of these financials or the accounting information. We, as the auditors, do it on their behalf. The financial market, capital markets, they all rely on us. So once they see the audit opinion, and it's a clean audit opinion, they believe that we have done enough looking at their behalf. And therefore, we should ensure that we offer quality audits. The purpose of the independent audit is to provide confidence in the quality of the financial statements. So if the audit has failed the quality, then how will it judge the quality of the financial statements? That's the importance of us considering audit quality from the perspective of all firms, particularly the SMEs. I'm quite sure that we are able to meet these quality standards, and we can offer. Excuse me. I want to dig into key audit quality improvement initiatives, the audit firm actions. We are going to look at the key audit quality improvement initiative in two aspects, in 3 levels. One, there is that of the firm, what we should do as a firm. Then there is what the client must do. And there is also what the profession must do for us to be able to achieve audit quality. We should all focus on achieving, as firms, we should all focus on achieving, improving, and maintaining audit quality. We should purpose to do that. It should be one of our goals. It must be our objective that we need to move towards that. And as the auditors, we can deliver professional, high-quality audits by considering, but not limited to the following. Because I know there are very many other initiatives that you can look at. But I'm going to quickly skim through these that we can do as a beginning, and then you'll add on as we move on. One of it is developing a strong culture focused on quality audits and professional skepticism. That's the culture that you must develop. Should anybody walk into your audit firm, either as a new staff, he must know that you treasure quality audits and you work towards it. People must be able to move towards your goal. And SMPs can comfortably do that by developing this kind of culture. We should appropriately resource audits based on complexity, irrespective of audit fees. I do not believe that audit fees must determine the time I give to a client. What determines the time I give the client is my decision to accept that client, not their audit fees. So if you think audit fees are not reasonable and you want to offer the service, then please don't accept the client. But once you have engaged with the client, then audit fees become secondary. So you should only resource the audits based on complexity, how complex the client. Allocate reasonable time towards planning, execution, and the results evaluation. That's the reporting level of it. As a partner, look into it. Use experienced staff on some of these complex audits with lesser trainees. Offer increased and better use of experts wherever necessary. You want to be an expert in everything. If it is valuation and you think you're not good, you are not going to value that business, you can co-opt another audit firm to do for you the business valuation. If it is machinery, you are not good in valuing machinery, please allow the client to engage a professional valuer to value such a machinery for you. Then you agreeing with the clients that we can estimate these figures, we can estimate the value. In most cases, both of you, you and the client, do not have the expertise to do that. SMP should consider implementing or continue action plans with particular focus on identifying and addressing audit risks and issues on a timely manner. Don't deal with an audit issue when the audit has started. That's when you have the risks. The risks have become too many and you have already resourced or under-resourced the audit. Do it at an early stage when you still have enough time. Accepting and addressing audit quality review findings from both internal and external inspection. Don't quarrel with the Lutimbas and the Susans when they come to your farm. Accept what they bring out and move towards improvement. And with the time will be there. Effective internal supervision and reviews. Put in more time to review the audit files. Review the audit reports, the workings of the client, to ensure that as a partner or senior management of your audit firm, you are able to raise pertinent questions that the audit team must address, areas that they should look into to ensure that you are convinced. Don't allow any report to move out of the audit firm without your sanction. It's very important to sanction all reports and after you have looked through them. You never know, your last eye can save you from a lot. SMP should consider implementing a robust accountability mechanism. If you are going to achieve audit quality, you need to ensure that people are accountable within the firm. The partners must be accountable. Audit team members must be accountable, and where possible, link results to their remuneration. Where you hit good quality and you don't see any audit quality review findings, then you can give a bonus for the team that has worked on that engagement. And for those that have not done well, of course, something they'll miss that bonus. Next time they'll want to work and deliver. Invest in staff training and continuous professional education, including conducting internal firm trainings to expose your staff to practical aspects of FRSs, ISAs, and legal rules. These staffs are representing you. Your staff as an SMP, they are not auditors. You are actually the auditor. You are the one who signs these reports. And if you don't train them into what you want, it's most likely that you may not get what you expect. Engage into internal firm audit procedures. Expose the staff to that. Train them into it. Sponsor them for external professional seminars. Sponsor them for professional accountancy bodies qualification schemes so that they are able to be exposed. Now, this mainly when you have the staff. But even for sole practitioners, where you may not necessarily be having a staff, you can consult your fellow practitioners in some areas, and so you are able to be accountable. Partners should be accountable to each other. If they have said your audit file does not meet the criteria, please accept and improve. It's not a sign that you should walk away from the firm and say, now do they think I'm not a CPA? Yes, you're a CPA. And we all agree that you are. But this particular audit file has failed the standard. So let's improve it. And by so improving, we become accountable. Exercising professional skepticism is a critical part of conducting quality audits. Auditors must critically assess with a questioning mind. Anything that a client gives you, you must assess it with a questioning mind. Some clients will deliver to you the bank confirmations. Don't just accept it because the bank has brought it. How sure are you that they're not from the NASA bank in Uganda here? We all know there's NASA bank. You may be looking at a confirmation from NASA. So ask yourself, why should the client deliver it and not the bank? Some clients would want to sign the bank confirmations and deliver them directly to the bank without delivering them to you to ensure that you are the one taking them there. You may need to engage it more. Go back to the bank confirmation. Go back to the bank reconciliation and the bank statements and obtain some assurance. Question everything that management is doing. And that's why you are an auditor. Not to be over-reliant on or readily accept explanations and management representations. In some cases, management would want to drive you towards a certain direction, and they will give you representation towards that direction. They will give explanations towards that direction. Don't accept and just keep writing management explanations. Have you questioned them? Have you tried to do other procedures to corroborate such explanations? All of those are key to professional skepticism. Not seek out evidence to corroborate estimates or treatments rather than appropriately challenging them. In most cases, auditors are looking for evidence to put on the file, and we are not corroborating such evidence. In such a case, I would assume that you as an auditor, you have already made a conclusion, and you are now looking for evidence to justify your conclusion. That will not be a quality audit. Time is against us. Automation, standardizing and automation of the audit process is another key thing for us to achieve audit quality. It's very difficult to achieve quality audits using manual systems, where you have to get a pen and write all the explanation of management on a piece of paper And you have to continue cross-referencing. Gone are those times where we used to do audits for month and month, quarters of years, or half a quarter, you're still doing one audit. Clients expect us to deliver results in the shortest time possible. And the only way to do that and continue to be compliant is to automate and standardize audit procedures. Using standardized audit working papers and templates can enhance audit quality. Automation, the use of cards to probe the client's system, use of cards to document the work done, the standard checklists that have been implanted in these cards, all of those are key. You will reduce on duplication, you reduce on time that you're spending on these audits. Meanwhile, you are contributing or increasing the contribution towards your margin to at least make some small profit out of these lower priced audits. Automation shifts a greater burden of the literature review to the CATS vendor. This is one of the main reasons why I like automation and use of these working papers, because reviewing the audit literature, the burden moves to the vendor to ensure that the system is compliant with the audit standards. The only thing I need to do is those areas where I'm not very comfortable, then I pull out my standard and try to read the paragraphs, but not 100% of the standard every time it comes onto the market. Some CATs produce full FRS and IFRS for SME compliant financial statements from an uploaded trial balance or a general ledger. This is very important. It's a very important aspect for SMEs and us, the SMPs. You will agree with me that most of our clients don't produce these financial statements. They have no capacity. It's an owner-managed business. He has one of his or her daughters managing with him or her. They can't produce the accounts. This is the reality in the market. It's the practical aspects that the SMPs are actually finding. If you are too lucky, you will get a trial balance or an Excel summary, if you are too lucky. Otherwise, you may get payment vouchers and some box files come towards your office. So you will need to produce these financial statements once they are done. And CATs can help you to do that very fast, and you are able to produce FRS compliant financial statements. Technology is a permanent thing, if I may have to say. You just have to learn how to live with it. It's an evil that will never go away, whether you like it or not. For you and me, we will go away from this world. We'll leave the profession here, but from the look of things, we shall leave technology here. So learn to live by it. CATs are so cheap now, very cheap. You can even pay per engagement. If you don't want to invest a lot of your money into owning one, you pay per engagement. When you get an audit client, you pay. And after that, you wait when you get another audit client. So I think, why should we continue carrying huge files of papers around you? We are moving around in the compound of clients with a lot of papers and boxes of papers. That's no longer necessary. Audit file 1, audit file 2, audit file 3, referring to only one current year for a client, and you have 1, 2, 3, up to 4 box files. What for? Let's leave that for the lawyers, because they have a lot of things to carry to the judge. But for us, let's go CATs. I'll give you an example here of DraftWorks. DraftWorks is one of the softwares that I found very productive, and I just fell in love with it. It has the Excel aspect of it, but you can pay per user and it's unlimited as you move on. You can delegate sections of audits to different staff. So a number of staffs can work on the same audit file, and you just combine them. You can collaborate with the audit staff, so you're able to move. And it has been localized for Uganda. So you don't need to go again, you're looking for Companies Act 104, and then you're wondering 104 from which country. No. It will read Companies Act 2012. It will read our own local standards. So the area of you changing are extremely little. You have full FRS, SME, you can consolidate, you have monthly packs, a lot of things. You will follow this up on their website. The other aspect that an SNP should do is to research. And I add continuously research. Don't wait for what comes towards you. There's a lot of information about financial reporting, audit standard, and ESAs. This information is everywhere on the internet. Please engage into the internet. Utilize the internet. Pick a lot of information, and once you have gotten it, you may need to share it with your staff, with your fellow partners, update your standard working papers, because these things are there. Buy the manuals. There are a lot of textbooks about auditing. My principle is different. Even if I read a 120-page or 500-page book, and I can only pick one audit procedure from there, that's enough for me. It will solve me a lot of, it will help me a lot of work, and I will avoid a lot of work simply because of that one audit procedure. How others have done it. We may not need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is already round. So what are we going to do? Are we going to make it rectangular? No. So let's move with what's available. Conducting effective audit quality reviews. This can be done at a firm level. You can do it using external, you can do external peer reviews. Most firms I know continue to wait for the CPA. The day CPA will come, but CPA comes after 3 years. What happens if within 1 or 2 years after they have left, you receive an insurance claim, a client sues? So some of these, the improvement is ours. We need to continue doing it at firm level. Even if you're a solo practitioner, you may engage with your other solo practitioner or call upon another firm that you trust, and at least they look through and are able to advise you on a few things to do. So we need to do both internal and external. ICPAU comes at last. So please don't wait for the regulator to come at your door when things are bad. And sometimes then they come when things are not pleasant. They may come with results which are not good. So why don't you prepare yourself for better results? You cannot get a first-class degree unless you have actually prepared for it. So we need to work towards it.
CPM, Musabe, could we wrap up such that we have some response to some questions here?
Good. Let me just run to Remedial. We are saying that we need to be, once they have identified audit quality review findings, please invest in them and look at the causes, find out what caused this, and then you are able to overcome them, implement procedures that can overcome that. I've already covered that. Conducting effective root cause analysis. You should focus, why did I fail? What went wrong? And how can I improve that? Audit quality, the role of others, for example, directors. Directors must ensure that management is able to deliver quality financial information to auditors. The role of management, they must prepare these financial statements. They must have systems in places, records, all that can support their financial statements. Key for us. Directors should review the financial statements and sign off on documents so that they can hold the management accountable. The role of others, want to look at the standard setters. The standard setters currently where we are with the audits, whether you are auditing a micro entity, small or medium, we are under standard size fits all, which is very unfortunate, but we are also happy that the board is now trying to lessen up by seeing how to improve. Much as they say that we can proportionately apply these audit standards, but there are areas where we need clarified guidance on how to apply that and summarize the ones. Those ones may need to come through. I'm trying to look forward when we shall have the audit standards for SME or less complex entities and the others that follow. Professional accounting bodies like CPAs come up with templates that SMEs can use. We see other countries like the UK, they have simplified procedures for micro and small entity audits. We want to see those come up from our regulators and many others. They conduct the quality reviews, audit quality reviews that the CPAs bring up. So when this comes up, please let us receive it in good spirit and work towards the improving. We want to conclude by saying that we should continue to develop a culture where partners and staff recognize and accept findings, support improvements to audit quality, support and undertake genuine root cause identification, and implement effective solutions to address the root causes. We need to standardize these audits, and audit quality is an evolving, continuous process. You can't achieve it today and say forever, I have achieved it. You must keep checking, keep working, and checking yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CPA Musabe. Ladies and gentlemen, time is not our best ally, but I can see from a number of responses here, your colleagues, your fellow practitioners are really very happy with the insights you have shared with them, particularly those who are within the realm of SMPs. My only appeal is I see people appreciating, so we hope we have picked something. That is a pledge that ICPAU has committed to do, to extend such learning to you, the practitioners. Like James has indicated, we should not look at any other aspects. Let our target be around ensuring quality, audit quality, work in the work we do, quality in the work we do, so that we may keep the profession as shiny as it has always been. James, there were a couple of questions, but in the interest of time, I'm afraid we may not be in position to handle them. But probably there was someone here, Nazima, who wished that you leave a contact for the card supplier. A number of other questions rotated around the audit evidence, gathering audit evidence amid this COVID. What I can only commit to the attendees today is that the Institute is developing frequently asked questions, especially those that are COVID related. We shall be issuing our first publication very soon, and we believe this should have a number of these questions that you are raising. But like we also said at the beginning, feel free whenever you are faced by any challenge to contact the Institute. It could be technical, it could be otherwise. We'll be happy to share with you what our feeling is. There is someone who had wished to inquire on whether, if the conditions persist, whether the Institute can adopt a document sign application. What I can only comment about this is that we are working around ensuring how we can implement the provisions of the various standards that are at play, particularly including the requirements of the practice statement that was issued in 2016. And within the practice statement, automatically, it embedded that requirement of a seal, a requirement of a unique identifier. That is under discussion, and anyway, we shall be communicating to you. Thank you so much, CPA Musabe. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We had over 500 people attend. I can only pledge that as the Institute, we shall keep giving you these webinars. Like James has indicated, we are shifting from international quality control standards, quality control to international quality management standard. And in management of quality, aspects of human resource training, skilling are very, very key. That is why we believe that such lifelong continued professional training is very, very key for even you, our dear practitioners. Allow me to thank our panelists. James, thank you so much. You've been so handy in sharing that voice of the SMPs. CPA Mayanja, and to you all, practitioners and attendees, we shall be sharing with you the comments, the questions in our first publication of the frequently asked questions during the COVID era. I remain Charles Mutimba with the team at ICPAU. We thank you and wish you the best. Thank you.